Welcome back to She Said What, the podcast. I am here with one of my beautiful friends, Mimi Watts. Hello, how are you?
Hello. I'm so good. I'm very excited to be here.
I am so freaking excited to have you here, making the most of you being in Melbourne for such a short amount of time. For those who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Mimi Watt, as you said, and I'm a dating and relationship coach, and I work specifically with people who have an anxious attachment style, and I help them to heal their anxious attachment style so that they can become more secure within themselves and therefore attract healthy, secure love.
Which is like at every single woman.
At nearly everyone.
I definitely
Yes.
know I've been there before. How did you get into this? Because it's quite a specific niche of women to work with.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I've been coaching for about 5 years, but I got specifically into this area of coaching in relationships and anxious attachment based on, I would say, my own journey. It's been one of the biggest transformations I've had in my own life is really uncovering my anxious attachment style and realizing that that was the reason relationships had been so difficult my whole life, like starting from the first boyfriend I had when I was, I think, 16 or 17 up until mid to late 20s. Every relationship had a very similar pattern, and it was like the same person with a different face is what I like to say, you know. I was always anxious in relationships. I was always told I was too needy. I was too much, like just shut down at every turn. And I went through a breakup in 2020 that was very pivotal and very, very painful. And that was the relationship that kind of cracked me wide open to want to understand why. Can we swear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
cool.
for it. Fuck.
Like, why the fuck? Why the fuck is this happening all the time? Like, I can't do this again. And, you know, I remember having this really distinct moment where I would look at everyone else I knew, all these other couples, and thinking to myself, why do they seem to have it so easy? Why does it seem to work for them? What's wrong with me? Like, am I the problem? And yeah, I took a good hard look at myself and realized I'm the common denominator, you know, amongst all these relationships. So the answer has to be within me to change this. And that's when I delved into the world of attachment styles. And I first learnt about it through reading the book Attached by Dr. Amir Levine, if you may have read it. And I remember my eldest sister had been trying to get me to read this book for several years up until this moment. And, you know, it's like the older sister thing and you keep pushing it away. And I don't need it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then this breakup happened. I was like, I need it.
Give me the book.
Give me the damn book. And I like inhaled this book. Like, I couldn't put it down because with every single word that I read, it was like the validation I had craved and needed from every partner I've ever had in this one book.
Whoa. Okay, I'm going to link it in the show notes. Continue.
Link this book. Everyone needs to read it. And I read this book and it was like everything clicked. Everything finally made sense. And I realized that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not inherently broken. I'm just operating from this certain blueprint that I learned about love as a child through my dynamics with my parents and my family that just had me looking at love with a warped perception. You know, it's like almost like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you have this really warped perception of what you see, but other people don't see that. That's kind of a weird analogy I've never used before, but it's sort of like that. Anyway, so I went on this huge journey of healing my anxious attachment style through reading, through working with coaches, through doing programs, through a lot of self-study, etc. And I did it. Like, I really healed that part of myself and became securely attached, which is the goal. And since then, like, my dating life has changed, my relationships have changed, and you know, when I was wanting to delve like into something more specific in the coaching space, my friend asked me, she said, what are you naturally really good at, or what do you get told you're good at all the time? And it's actually around like communication in relationships and, you know, that ability to I guess, have that self-esteem and that confidence in what you want and what you need and what you deserve, and being able to communicate that, like, that had been a really dramatic shift for me. And so I started speaking to that in my content and made that shift, and turns out it resonated with a lot of people. And and then as soon as I started in this area, I just didn't stop. It just felt so right. So that's the long and short of it, of how I got into it.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that, like dating the same person with a different face. And how incredible that you had the self-awareness and self-honesty to go, it's me. I'm the drama.
Hey, it's me.
Because so many people don't, right? And they just keep repeating the same patterns and go, well, it's this dickhead or it's this dickhead. But it's like, hang on, I'm the common denominator in this. What can I actually change? So as you, I guess, started to heal your anxious attachment style and get into being a more secure queen, how did it actually impact the way you saw yourself and the way you started showing up in dating?
Such a good question. I think the biggest thing that changed was it was truly like these rose-colored glasses came off. And there's this saying that says, like, when you put rose-colored, what is it? It's like red. Okay, yeah. When you put rose-colored glasses on, red flags just look like flags or something.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. So you're not seeing things for what they really are. So when I healed my attachment style, it was like I took these glasses off, and things that honestly, like my nervous system and my subconscious previously saw as attractive, all of a sudden was so unattractive. So it was much easier for me to recognize red flags and things that were not a match for me, and see them for what they are, as really unattractive and not something I wanted in my life or relationships, and walk away with much more ease than previous times. And I think learning that there's nothing wrong with you, it helps you you don't buy into the bullshit that people try to convince you of. Like, if someone was to, let's say, gaslight me in the early stages of dating, they just had no chance with me anymore. It's like, yeah, try me. Like, you cannot pull the wool over my eyes anymore. There's just no way. So I think my self-concept really increased, because it was just like all these wounds and these scars I was carrying, like, they had healed. And so I didn't see myself as this broken human who deserved subpar treatment in a relationship. I was like, no, I see myself as a really great, valuable person. I like who I am. I respect myself, and my standards just naturally rose. And so, then going into dating, anyone who was trying to treat me badly, or the standard wasn't meeting my standard, it was just like, no, absolutely not. See ya.
Bye.
Because you realize that there's so much better out there, and you don't have to settle anymore. Yeah.
That's incredible. Because coming back to what you said about the nervous system, right? Your nervous system all of a sudden was just like, I guess not all of a sudden, but it was like, that's not attractive to me anymore.
Yeah.
And this is a big part of the work that I do with my clients as well, because even though consciously you're like, this guy or this girl is a dickhead, but your nervous system's like, yeah, gimme.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that response?
Yeah, totally. So anyone listening who, if you feel like you are attracting people who are really hot and cold, they're saying one thing then doing another, they're actually quite emotionally unavailable, they're stringing you along, you'll notice that you have this sensation in your body that is sort of this like fight or flight feeling, where it's that feeling where you're on a roller coaster, and you go up and there's this extreme high, and then you have this huge dramatic low, and it's up and down. You never really know quite what's happening, or it's like you're walking through a haunted house and you're on edge, and then like bam!
I just had this like great visual in my head. It's like, ban unread text, miscommunication, inconsistency.
Hasn't responded for 3 days. Wow.
And they're just like jumping out.
Literally ghosted. Oh my God. So that's what it feels like. Like, your nervous system is on fucking edge all the time. And even though it feels awful in a sense, because you're like, I can't live my life like this. Like I can't focus on anything else because I'm just hooked and on edge of like what's going to happen next. Even though consciously you don't want that, subconsciously that is actually what your nervous system is wired for. It's what it's used to. So therefore it finds it attractive. And it all comes back to your childhood dynamics and what your relationship was like with your parents or caregiver, right? So the anxious attachment style will be developed if your parents were physically or emotionally unavailable to you as a child. So, and you know, people will often say, oh, but I had a great childhood. Like, I don't know. I don't understand. Like I wasn't mistreated, blah, blah, blah. But your parents could have been there physically. They cooked for you, cleaned, did your laundry, took you to school, blah, blah, blah. But if there were instances where you were having an emotional experience, you needed some sort of support or validation from your parents. And, you know, even things as small as like them consistently saying like, oh, I don't have time for this right now, right? Just go to your room, just deal with it. Well, you know, I don't have time for this. Or coming to them being upset and them saying, it's not a big deal. This isn't a big deal, right? Those little instances that accumulate over time develop this anxious attachment style, right? Because your emotional needs are consistently invalidated. And so as a child, because you are completely reliant on your parents for your sense of connection and belonging and survival, at that age, you're not like, oh, well, fuck you guys, I'm out. You know, you're like, oh my God, okay, well, it must be something to do with me. Because up until about the ages of 7, 8 years old, I think it's around that, or even a little bit earlier, you haven't yet developed the ability to recognize things as not being about you, right? So instead of being able to read a situation and say, oh, that has nothing to do with me, that person's probably just having a bad day, or, oh, that person probably just hasn't learnt the tools to hold space for my emotions in a healthy way. It's actually not about me. You don't have that ability as a child, so you interpret everything to be about you. So if your parents aren't able to be there for you, you internalize that as like, oh, this is my fault. There's something wrong with me. And so because because you are completely dependent on them for love and survival and connection, you then try even harder. You lean in more and you say, what can I do? Like, how can I be perfect? How can I do the right thing? Or just try even harder to get my emotional needs met. And that dynamic in itself is never going to feel good in your body. That's going to create tension and anxiety in your nervous system. And so if that's what's happening over those formative years, that it becomes imprinted.
Yeah. The body keeps the score.
Body keeps the score.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then you're carrying that blueprint into your adult relationship. So anytime, and this is the fascinating thing, is people say, you know, again, consciously, you're like, I don't want to date this person. They're a dickhead, or this person's rude, or they don't tick any of my boxes, but there's something underlying there. And it's like this invisible magnetic pull, and you're just like, but I'm so attracted, but I need their validation. I need them to want me.
Yeah.
And it's because of that blueprint, your nervous system, that is sensing familiarity.
Yeah.
In the dynamic.
It's that saying of like your nervous system will mostly always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So and it's happening mainly when you're unaware of all of this information that we're talking about. You're not aware of why it's happening. It just keeps happening, which is why the pattern just repeats itself, because, as you said, we love familiarity, even if it's hell or it's like a familiar chaos, we prefer that. So that's why, that's how it kind of happens.
Yeah. I love that you call it a blueprint. Because it is, you learn these things and these ways to get love, to give love, and how to behave, I guess, in order to receive praise, in order to receive love as a child. So you just go, yep, this worked for me. This is what I'm familiar with. This is how I get love as an adult. Yeah. And it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah. I started calling it a blueprint just recently, actually. I was putting together my signature program. It's called Peacefully Attached. And I was putting together a module just really trying to understand the foundations of attachment style. And it just came to me and I was like, think of your attachment style as if you're a builder, right? And you've been given a job to go and build a a building.
We're obviously tradies here.
And they say, okay, go and build this building. Here's the blueprint to do it, right? They need to be given a blueprint or some sort of instruction of what do you want built.
Probably.
So it's not the builder's fault. It's the blueprint they're given, right? That might be dodgy or it's wrong. So they go and build this building and the foundation is wrong. It's not stable. So at first it might look okay, but then very quickly cracks are going to show, things are going to decay. It's going to break down.
Oh my God. This is
Same as a relationship.
Whoa.
But if you swap out the blueprint and it's correct, then that builder's going to go and build that building on secure foundations. Like the fitting's going to be correct. It's going to be able to withstand all different types of environments, natural disasters, whatever. And it's going to be sturdy and it's going to go the distance. So you see, it like separates you. It's not that you're the problem. It's not the builder. Sometimes they are, but it's not the builder is defect. It's the blueprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you are the builder with this defective sounds really aggressive.
It does. Sorry.
Blueprint that doesn't necessarily fit the land.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit what you want to do. It's
Yeah.
not your fault, but to have the awareness of like, hang on, this blueprint isn't necessarily giving me what I want it to create or what I want to build in my life. Where can I make adjustments? Where can I make changes so that my foundations are stronger, so that I can withstand all of these things? I love that analogy. Literally so fucking much.
Take that. Put it in your pocket.
Put it in my pocket.
Come back to it later.
Okay, if someone's listening and they're like, holy fuck, this is me, I keep going for the bad boys because I know that this used to be me as well. Just like they don't treat you nicely, but there's this part of you, this like primitive part of you that wants the bad boy. And I've had this happen with clients as well, doesn't want the nice guy because they're boring.
Yeah.
Right? Can you speak to us about that?
Yes, I can. So the bad boy, the classic bad boy. I mean, first of all, I will say that I think attachment styles aside, I think there is something quite primitive in us that we like the chase. Like we are animals at our very core and we hunt and we chase. So I think it's actually wired within us to a certain extent.
Yes.
So, you know, like a little bit of that is hot. Like a little bit of that is nice, you know. Let's not totally demonize it. But you're right. The problem comes when that is the consistent pattern where people are just totally hooked on people who mistreat them and treat them like shit and they just don't give up. Even when this person has shown you who they are time and time again through their actions, through their behavior, but you choose to ignore it or look past it because you're like, well, now I just want them even more. Or I'm kind of used to that, like being treated a bit shit and I just want to fight even harder to win them over. And which is something that people with anxious attachment style will often do is like they can sort of see it as a challenge and be like, yeah, but I'm different. But I'm the one who will change you.
Yes.
I'm the one who will like win you over. And of course it pretty much never happens because it's the other person. But so the bad boy versus the boring or the nice guy. Yeah. It comes back to your nervous system and needing to sort of unravel and relax into what being in a secure relationship feels like. And I think the biggest piece is in making this shift really is awareness. I know that it was for me, it is for my clients, it's almost like you need to like lift the hood of the car and have a look at the engine and say, okay, where's this problem coming from? We need to be aware of it so we can see more clearly of how to move forward and fix it. And so that's where I really start with my clients is looking at, we need to go back and look at, first of all, what are all the patterns you're repeating? What are the types of partners you're attracting? Where is that stemming from? Like, what is the core belief that you are carrying, which is often so unconscious? Like, whether it's I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of secure love, I'm not worthy of being treated and having my having my needs met. We need to look at where those core beliefs come from. And then there's a process of healing and nurturing those wounds. And through that process of healing, then you become more secure within yourself. Like you start to give yourself the validation of I am good enough. I am worthy of secure love. And then, I mean, let me say, okay, so a lot of people think that once you become secure and you get a healthy partner, that it's all sunshine and rainbows and that's the easy part. And actually it can be one of the most challenging parts, because your brain and your body will want to discard anyone who's just like nice, because it will feel boring.
Yeah.
It will. It's like if you've been spending your whole life being an adrenaline junkie on roller coasters, and then I was to say, okay, instead we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to go for a lovely stroll along the water.
You'd be like,
Like, this is so fucking boring. Like,
Yeah.
what? But it's often what is, I mean, at first, often what is good for you can be boring. It's not sexy, you know, but you need to remind yourself of, what have you been telling yourself for years, your whole life, that you want? You want the consistency. You want to know where you stand. You want to feel safe and secure with your partner. You want to feel safe when you're with them and when you're not with them, so that you can focus on the rest of your life, so that you can thrive and feel happy and have that partnership. You want to make each other better, not worse and anxious. And so, you know, there's a saying that I always remind myself of, which is, still waters run deep.
ooh, explain that to
Still
me.
waters run deep. So it's to remind yourself that when things are calm, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. Like, the depth is there. It's actually created through the calmness.
Nice.
Take a moment.
Take a moment. That visual in my head is just really nice.
Yeah. And so it can be helpful to remind yourself of that in those moments where you meet someone. Like, I'll have clients come to me when they're starting to attract like healthier partners, and they'll be like, oh, I went on a date with this guy and he was really lovely. Like, we had good conversation. We had a lot in common actually, and like shared quite a lot of values. And yeah, he was really polite and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but I don't know, just a bit boring.
I've fucking been there. I'm like, oh, he ticks all my boxes. Nah, he treated me too nicely.
Honestly. And I went through the same process myself when I got into like my first secure relationship. And I remember feeling a sense of like, oh, I could identify. I'm like, this person ticks all the boxes in all the departments, but I could feel myself wanting to sabotage.
That was going to be my next train of thought. Like, do you see that happening a lot? Because whilst you can like be anxious and like push things away in that way, or like anxiously grab onto them, I feel like there's this other end of the spectrum where, because you don't feel deserving of it and everything's great, you go, oh, and you like self-sabotage or self-protect in order to soothe that belief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you want to come back to that default belief. Yeah. And so, I mean, a personal example, like when I was a few months, it was in the early stages of my last relationship, beautiful guy, a great relationship. And I could feel myself wanting to create drama when there was none. I could feel myself wanting to like be a little bitch, or like be an asshole, or just be dramatic and create chaos, because I was like, where's the like,
The spice,
the
chemistry,
the passion, the spark, like, where is it?
Yes.
You know? And the key to this again is being so fucking aware, being conscious, and catching yourself when this comes up.
Yeah.
And what I actually did was I went to my partner and I had a conversation about it. And I said, this is probably going to sound crazy, but I can feel myself wanting to create drama, wanting to almost start a fight, because I am not used to this, to things being so calm and predictable and safe. I'm not used to it. And funnily enough, he said exactly the same thing. So whilst I had been used to attracting emotionally unavailable men, he was used to attracting emotionally unavailable women. And so he said, yeah, like when he's like, you're so available to me in the best way.
Yeah.
Like, it's everything I've ever wanted, but it is unfamiliar. And so, you know, I guess through being vulnerable and opening up like that, we were able to laugh about it and have this shared experience. And then from there, sort of, you know, ask ourselves, okay, well, like, what do we want to do that we can like spice things up, or like do something that has a bit of novelty or fun? But it's also about reminding yourself, and we have to remind each other, hang on a second, this is what we've always wanted.
Yeah.
And let's actually relish in that and just sit with that for a minute and appreciate it. So it is a process, and it's not a linear journey. Like, you very well may take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. you know, it happens with current clients of mine, but it's just like having so much compassion for yourself, because if you've lived your entire life one way, it's going to take time to change. It's like trying to change the work you do with your clients, like trying to change their nervous system, their habits, their daily habits. It takes so much time and patience, right?
It's ingrained. It's literally physiological responses in the brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a quick fix.
It is not a quick fix.
Yeah. And I feel like that similar to like my clients, and I do a little bit of like relationship, tiny little bit sprinkled on top, but not to the depths of what you do. But I feel like I've had it before where clients will be like in their single girl era, loving life, so confident.
Yeah.
And then they start dating again and they go, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was confident. I thought I was secure in who I am. And now I feel like absolute shit. And I would love to get your opinion on this. But what I say is like, it's like you have decided to start practicing basketball. So you go to the court by yourself and you're just shooting some hoops alone. And you're like, yeah, I'm really good at this. And then all of a sudden you go and play a game with other people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you can be really good by yourself. But until you're against obstacles, challenges, resistance, you don't actually know how good that practice you've been putting in is yet. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. Yeah. And it's a great analogy.
Thank you. I made it up
Love
myself.
that. Yeah. Yeah. We love analogies and metaphors are like the best way to help something land.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
So my thoughts on this are that I agree. You can feel, and many people say this to me as well, they feel so confident, self-assured, they're thriving in their independence whilst they're single. And then as soon as they start dating, all of that can just like turn to shit and they become this version of themselves they don't recognize. They're like, where did that confidence go? Where did that self-worth go? Where did those standards go? Like, what the hell? And it's because your like relationships acts as a, can I get my words out? Relationships act as a mirror. So a relationship will always reflect back to you the parts of yourself that you have not yet healed or that need more healing and attention. And it doesn't matter how much self-development work you've done, how much healing work you've done, it's like you do not fully grow and develop the skill and etc. until you're in the game, until you're in the relationship. It's like, yeah, you can read about how to become a great swimmer, but you're not going to become a great swimmer until you're actually in the water doing the thing.
Yes.
And so it's kind of inevitable, right? But you can start to reframe it not as a bad thing, but reframe it as a real opportunity, right? So when you are in a relationship and there's triggers coming up and your confidence or your self-worth is starting to take a bit of a wobble, instead of beating yourself up and being mad about that, look at that as like, okay, like something is being reflected back to me right now. Let me go internally and have a look at this and like, where is this coming from and what does this remind me of? And what does my inner child, the part of me that is so afraid of rejection and abandonment, like what does she need to hear from me right now? And then second to that is communicating with your partner.
Yeah.
And having those really uncomfortable conversations. And I had a client of mine I've been working with for the last 4 months and she is like a different person now. It's amazing. And she's now in a new relationship and she's in love and it's very exciting. And you know, she's come so far, but we were chatting the other day and she came and she had this experience where something triggered her and she had this intense reaction and burst into tears and like all the works and was really freaking out. And, you know, I said to her, I'm like, yeah, that's normal. Like, that's okay. It's part of the process. But in that moment, her partner being secure and emotionally available was able to, number one, like just hold her and let her just experience the emotion. Not trying to make it bad, not trying to shut it down, make it wrong. Just let her experience it and cry it out and just be there for her. And then second to that, once she had calmed down, was just being curious and inquiring. And that's really the approach you want to take with all of this, is the energy of curiosity, because it's such a neutral, like nicer approach than being like, what's wrong with me? Or like, why isn't this fixed? It's like, okay, let me just be curious. Like, what was coming up for you there? And you know, what are you afraid of here? And how can I like reassure you and comfort you? And so it is that process, you know, like they say relationships take work, and they do. It's not this story that Hollywood tries to sell you that you meet your Prince Charming or your princess, whatever, and then you go off into the sunset and that's you're happily ever after.
Yeah.
It's not real life. It takes consistent work, but the work is far better than the discomfort and the pain of the work you essentially are trying to do when you're in toxic relationships and you just like you're alone in it basically, you know.
I want to come back to what you said about letting her, like holding her through it and feeling the emotion, because I feel like that's where so many people get stuck, is they can intellectualize the emotion of like, I feel really fucking triggered anyway.
Yep.
But how would you suggest to someone when they feel, whether it's a visceral, like full body reaction, or they want to cry, or they feel angry, or they've been triggered?
Yeah.
How would you suggest that they hold themselves through that and move through that?
Yeah, beautiful. So it really is, as you said, you don't want to. I get people to tune into the feeling in their body. So, okay, it's like you've been triggered and you're having a physical reaction. Go in and locate the feeling in your body. So I often say, like, close your eyes, put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and really tune in and say, okay, where is the feeling in my body? Okay, it's like it's in my chest, it's in my throat. Okay, and just observe it. So almost like separating yourself from the feeling, observing it. Another thing that can be helpful is to describe what it feels like in your body, because emotions can be really scary, right? They can feel like a real threat to our brain. But if you just look at it as like, okay, this feels like there's a vibration in my chest, my heart is racing, I can feel like some heat in my chest. Okay, that's okay. Like, let me just feel that. It's just a vibration in my body. Let me just be with it. And then breathing, of course, like deepening the breath, because when we are triggered, we'll go into a fight or flight response, which our body deems as like, oh, we are under threat. And so, you know, if you're being chased by a tiger, you're not going to be able to be taking like nice, long, deep breaths.
You're not
as
running.
You're sprinting for your life.
I can't even do the arm motions at the same time.
Like,
yes.
Not possible. You were going to be shallow breathing. Your heart's going to be racing. So you want to just simple things like deepening your breath is going to signal to your body, we are safe. Everything is okay. Like nothing bad. We're not going to die here. So it is just getting present with that vibration in your body, giving it the space it needs, and really validate yourself is such a big piece of this, because when you can validate an emotion, you make room for accepting the emotion.
Yes.
Right? So if you like think of an experience where maybe you've gone to your friend or your partner or your parent, whatever, and you're really upset about something and you just want them to hear you and just be there for you. But that person, instead of just letting you explain it or experience it, they just come at you with solutions, or they just shut you down or whatever. It creates so much tension in your body and it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, you're telling me I can't accept it. It shouldn't be there. So it's wrong. So it's bad. So that's just layering shit on top of shit, right? So, but if you came to me and you were really upset and I just sat here with you and I was just really present and I didn't try to throw a solution at you, I didn't try to change it. I just said, I get it. It's okay.
Even my body now is like, okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing triggering me, but that's so beautiful.
You know, it's like that makes sense you feel upset. That makes so much sense that you feel scared right now. I get that you're afraid of being rejected. That makes sense. I'm here for you. Like,
do you feel the whole energy in the room just shift?
yeah. And it's as simple as that. And then if I allow that, you feel your whole body relaxes and you go, oh, okay. Okay. And that simple process is something that I just think everyone needs to learn, everyone needs to implement, parents need to do with their children.
Yes.
Because that's where it all starts. And so when you give yourself that validation, you're able to accept it, the emotion will pass through you much more quickly than if you were to suppress, deny, judge it, abandon it. Like, it will pass more quickly. And then after the emotion has passed, you'll be able to think more clearly about, okay, what just came up for me? What was that experience reminding me of? Why was I triggered? And how do I want to respond to this situation from a healthy, secure place rather than react, right? Because when your emotion is high, your intelligence is low.
Yes.
When emotion is low and calm, intelligence is high. We can think more clearly. So from that space, you can say, okay, you know, what just triggered me? Is that something that is my shit to deal with? Like, is that a wound from a past relationship that I need to work through? Is there a way I can self-soothe more? I can be here for myself and I don't necessarily maybe even need to involve my partner? Or is it, okay, there was a certain behavior my partner is doing, either it's a one-off or it's repetitive, and that behavior isn't okay with me and it's making me feel unsafe. So now that I'm calm and neutral, I want to go and have a conversation with my partner in a way where they're going to be receptive to the information, right? Because if you're really emotional and you're just like coming at your partner and just like, you do this and you shouldn't do that, of course they're going to get defensive. They're going to get their guard up. They're not going to be able to hear the pain that is actually underneath the anger. And so if you can come at them from a really calm place, you have a way better chance of getting your needs met and improving the relationship from that point.
Yeah. I love what you said about like when your emotions are high, your intelligence is low, because that's exactly what happens when you're in that fight or flight response and your sympathetic nervous system is activated. Your prefrontal cortex switches offline. Like that's responsible for your logic, your analysis. So you can't actually analyze yourself out of this spot. Like you literally have to calm your system back down. And coming back to what you said about, okay, is this actually like, is this my shit or is this my partner's, or what's going on? How do you know the difference between, okay, I'm being triggered because of my, say, anxious attachment style or my wounds, versus this guy's just treating me like shit and he's a dickhead, or they're just pissing me off. How do you know the difference between those two things? And say, let's go in like the dating world.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really like the one thing to look at is how is the other person behaving and treating you? Like based on all your past experiences, are they acting in a way that is just not the way like a decent person would treat you? Do you know what I mean? Like, are they it can be little things like, okay, are they consistently saying like, oh, I'll call you after work? Then they don't actually call you, right? Or are they being really inconsistent with their communication style? Are they being like consistent one day, messaging you straight away, back and forth? Like there's a dynamic you're getting used to, and then all of a sudden it just changes and they don't respond for 3 days. And then when you question them about it, they're like, oh, I was just busy. It's like, no, because if you really care about someone, you can take a minute to say, I'm really busy for the next 5 hours. I'll give you a call afterwards, and then actually follow through with it, you know?
Yeah.
But with anxious attachment, you're so used to to being treated like shit and accepting that sort of standard that you think that's normal, right? But it's not. And so you want to look at, okay, well, is this other person treating me well? Are they being consistent? Like, are they in integrity? Are they doing what they say they're going to do? Are they making me a priority? Are they taking initiative? They're looking at all of those things. And if they are, and something is coming up for you, like maybe you're projecting a certain narrative onto them, like something you've experienced in the past and you're afraid of it happening again. So you're almost like putting it out there, like you're thinking it's going to happen, and then you're being triggered and anxious. That's when you need to self-regulate, go within, or regulate with the support of a coach or a therapist or someone who can help you work through that. Because there's a great quote I love, which is, if you don't heal your past wounds, you will bleed on those who didn't cut you.
Yes.
Yeah. Right? So we don't want to be bringing all of our, I guess, like past fears and insecurities into our present relationship. Like, yes, that is going to come up sometimes, and that's okay. But you want to look at, okay, if the person is being in integrity and they actually are treating me pretty well, but I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety, how I need to get a grip on that first. I need to kind of, but whereas if that person is behaving in a way that isn't great and they are not doing what they say they're going to do, and that is causing you to feel unsafe and anxious, then you want to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? This just came to me. What are your thoughts on that whole, if he wanted to, he would? Have you heard that? And you go like either way, because when you were talking about like, are they in integrity? Are they following through with their actions?
Yeah.
I feel like there's this whole thing, especially in like being a single gal, you hear these things of like, if he wanted to, he would. And if he's not responding, or she, like whatever you're into, if they're not responding or they're not texting you first, it's because they don't want to, and like not to get attached to that. Does that make sense?
Not to get attached to, what do you
mean?
To
them, as in like, stop justifying their inconsistency. Because if he wanted to message you or she wanted to message you, they would.
Yeah.
They haven't necessarily just forgotten about you, or they haven't necessarily gotten super busy and lost their phone, or they've yeeted it across the ocean.
Yeah.
If they wanted to message you, if they wanted to hang out with you, they would.
Yeah. I agree to it like 90%.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think it can get a little bit like, that saying is thrown around so much these days that it can be a bit like, oh, you're up on your high horse and you're like, if he wanted to, he would. And if there's like 1 ounce of mistreatment or whatever, like you're fucking gone.
Yes.
You know? And I think we want to leave a little bit of room for life getting in the way.
Being like humans,
living a messy, unpredictable life. And, you know, we need to like leave room for that. Especially in the early stages of dating, we want to remember that this person doesn't owe you anything.
Yes.
You're a stranger to them. They don't owe you anything. So you want to just like, yes, you want to have your standards and you want to know what you want and what you do and don't accept, but you also can't be putting all this expectation on this one person to like meet all of your needs from the get-go. Do you know what I mean? Because actually in those early stages, it's just a vibe check. You just like, do we like each other? Do we want to hang out? Can we have a good conversation, right? Before we're even looking at getting into the relationship stuff. But I think for the most of it, if they wanted to, they would. Because I always think about how you would treat someone you really like and respect and value their time, and you do want to continue the connection. Like you're going to show up for that. You know, you're not going to waste their time if you really care about them, or if you take it seriously. You will put in the effort and you will take initiative. I think you know, let's remember that if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, if we're looking at men, there can be that slogan slapped on them. If they wanted to, they would. But it's also, remember that they are also humans with their own trauma.
Yes.
With their own fears and insecurities.
Yes.
And they may have fear coming up of like, am I too much? Am I going to come across too much, too desperate? Am I approaching this the right way? Like, that can happen for them too, you know? So we want to have a bit of grace, I think, and give people a bit of slack. But generally, if they wanted to, they would, I think, is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With nuance, like with everything.
Nuance, exactly.
Yeah. I like what you said about them having their own shit, because I feel like there's so much in the dating world of like, yeah, if he wanted to, he would, and rah, rah, rah. And if they don't respond to one text, put them in the bin. It's like, maybe they do. Like, men think they're too much too, or like they've got their own anxious shit going on, their own parents, their own like lives.
Yeah. I think you want to look out for patterns.
Yes.
Is the key here. Because as you said, with nuance, like stuff can happen and people might slip up here and there, or like, oh shit, I'm really sorry I didn't get back to your text. But if it's becoming a pattern and this person is doing it every week, that's a problem. They're showing you who they are through their patterns.
Yeah.
You know? And also keeping in mind that people have different relationship styles, different communication styles, and it takes time to figure that out. You're not just, you can't expect yourself in other people.
Yeah.
From the get-go.
That in itself, right? Across life. Silence. A moment for the mic drop.
Sink in. Yeah, and I had to learn that and really humble myself as well, was to, I think speaking, you know, with as much humility as possible, I'm a very I would say emotional intelligence is a strength of mine. I'm very self-aware, empathetic. And I think in the beginning, I really expected that in other people.
Yeah.
Like, you should treat me the same way I would treat you or whatever. But I had to realize, I'm like, not everyone has the same emotional depth, right? That's an important one. Someone can be emotionally available. Like, yeah, I'm here for this. I want this connection. But they may not have the same emotional depth as you. So it can take people time. You have to learn about each other's dynamics, each other's communication styles. And it's uncomfortable. Like the early stages of dating just are. Like you can't really avoid it. You know, it's going to be uncomfortable in one way or another. But yeah, so give people grace, give people compassion, but look out for patterns. Yeah. And if it keeps happening and then you address it and you bring it up and either they shut you down and try to deny it, or say they're going to do better and change and they don't and they keep doing it, then it's like, see you later.
In the bin.
In the bin. Next.
Thank you. Next.
Sorry, Anna would say.
I love what you said about the communication styles as well, because I found this like years and years ago when I got back into the dating pool. A difference in communication via text was a big one, because I work for myself. My phone's usually within some kind of arm distance, unless I'm doing some like deep work and I'll put it in another room.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to like text pretty much all day. Like, what are you doing? What's for lunch? Like, I enjoy that kind of interaction.
Yeah.
But then I had met someone who was like, what? Like, don't, like, completely different communication style where they're not on their phone. They would much rather call on their way home from work or after work and hear all about my day. Does that, have you ever experienced that, or do your clients probably experience a lot of that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Very, very common. And it can be a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why do you hate me? And he's like, I'm working.
Yes. So I would say two things you can do when it comes to that is, if you're used to someone that is like texting all the time and you love that constant communication, kind of taking a moment and checking in with yourself and asking, okay, do I actually have something I really want to say and something I would like to ask or share, or do I just love like that constant attention and that constant like attachment to someone, and that constant, because it's like those little bursts of validation. If you're like, oh, I just did this, or I'm doing this, and like, oh, that's so cool. Like, where are you going to tell me? You are getting those little hits of validation, right?
And the dopamine of like, yeah, I did good.
The dopamine, yeah. So asking yourself like, do I actually have something I need or want to say here, or am I just kind of looking for that bit of attention and validation, which is nothing wrong with. There's no shame on that, but just getting real with yourself. And then the second piece is, if you find yourself, like you just said, what's wrong with me? Or like asking yourself, what am I making this mean about me? Huge. And really important to have that self-inquiry. Like, what am I making this mean about me? And you'll find that your brain is a dick. It will be like, I'm making it mean that he doesn't like me. He's not into me anymore. He's like into some other girl. I'm being too needy. I'm being too much. It's like, whoa. And we just really need to like lay that all on the table and look at it and give ourselves that compassion and that self-love and be like, okay, is this true?
Has he met someone else in the space of 2 hours while he's at work in a big meeting?
Yeah. Is this true? And, but speaking to yourself, this is like a process I work with my clients a lot, is reparenting.
Yes.
And being with your inner child, right? Because we're all just children running around in adult bodies. Like we all operate from this 7-year-old blueprint again. And we internalize a lot of different behavior dynamics, especially in romantic relationships, because it's such a close bond and a close tie. And we're born to like find a partner and mate. So it's very hardwired within us. So any behavior or anything that we take to mean something bad about ourselves, it's actually, you want to ask yourself, okay, what part of me is feeling like I'm not good enough? What part of me is afraid she's going to be abandoned here? And turning to that smaller version of you within you and giving her the calming reassurance and secure parenting that maybe she didn't get as a child. And that's when you want to work with yourself. That's another example of like, if the other person is saying to you, I'm just really busy at work, I need to focus and I'll call you after work. Initially your nervous system is going to be like freaking out, right? You're like, but
they hate me.
They hate me. Oh my God. And in that instance, that's when you don't want to start projecting all that onto your partner. You want to remind yourself, okay, I'm an adult. We need to take care of our emotions, Let me tune in with what part of me is scared right now, and let me be the secure adult for that part of me. Soothe her, give her the reassurance, ask her what she needs in this moment. And maybe she just needs some reassurance that everything's okay. She just needs some comforting. Okay, let me be here with you. Let me give that to you. And that process is so empowering because you bring the power back to yourself to make yourself feel okay. Whereas if you don't do that, you're always outsourcing your comfort, outsourcing your peace, your happiness, your power to the other person to make you feel better. And that's where we see relationships break down, because we can't rely on someone else to make us feel better all the time.
Oh, so powerful to be able to just regulate your own emotions and validate your own experience.
Yeah, I can't remember what the question was. I feel like I just went on a tangent.
I love it. Tangent away. But I do have one more question for you.
Yeah.
What is your most controversial opinion about your industry?
Spicy question. Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that having an anxious attachment style can actually be like a bit of a superpower.
Okay.
And it's a good thing.
Amazing. Tell me why.
And I think it's controversial because there's so much negative stigma attached to anxious attachment and shame. And even I remember when I first learned about it, I felt shame even admitting,
Same.
Oh, what's your attachment style? Oh, I'm anxious. And all of a sudden it's like, like, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Oh my God. You're going to think I'm a freak. You're going to think I'm going to cling on to you. And, you know, people think it's a bad thing. But I really believe that an anxious attachment style can be such a gift and such a positive thing when you work with it, right? When you get conscious of it. I think it has the ability to create really conscious, healthy relationships, because you are forced to get so in touch with yourself and so clear on, okay, if this is all the stuff that isn't working for me, this makes me feel so unsafe, so insecure, what do I need to feel safe and secure? And you have to put in a lot of practice to communicate that, right? To build up those communication skills, to build up your self-worth. And it's like, imagine if everyone put in that much attention and effort into themselves and their relationships.
Whoa.
Like, how different would relationships be?
Yeah.
So I think when you're conscious with it, it can be a real gift. And often people who are anxious, they feel things very deeply, which also means they have the ability to be extremely empathetic to other people. Because if you can feel your emotions deeply and sit with them and understand them, you're going to be so much more sensitive and understanding when other people come to you with a similar emotion. Like, I get it. I know what that is. I've experienced that. And there's so much healing that comes through that. Again, that mutual validation and understanding. So less hate on the anxious attachment style, more love and praise, right? Yeah, that's my opinion.
I love that. What a beautiful place to finish off. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
They can come and find me over on my Instagram, which is just @MimiWatt. That's where you can connect with me, work with me, just be in the community. I'd love for you to come check me out.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was the best.
Thank you so much for having me.